One day, his friend got drunk at the dinner table and pointed at me, saying, "You're so foolish. Do you really think your husband loves you? His first love got married to someone else. He gave up and then married you. Got it?" Chapter 1. I met Alexander through a blind date. And from the first moment I saw him, I liked him. I saved his contact as Little Sun because his smile was like the sun to me. How should I describe Alexander? He felt like another version of me in this world. He knew what I liked to eat, what kind of movies I loved to watch. Our daily routines were exactly the same. In the morning, we'd brush our teeth together in front of the mirror, and he'd pat my head while brushing his teeth. When I cooked, he'd wash the dishes for me. Even at night, when we slept, he knew my sleeping posture so well. Locking me tightly in his arms, he would happily bring me a big bag of cream puffs after work, telling me he had gotten them from the newly opened, super popular shop downstairs. "Mary, you'll absolutely love these." When Alexander smiled, there were 2 dimples at the corners of his mouth. He always knew my preferences, sharing only the links that interested me. One day, he told me he had seen a diamond ring on his way back from work that was perfect for me. I asked him what it looked like. He said, "Wait a moment," and pulled a small box from his pocket. He said, "Why don't you marry me? I want to call you my wife already." Chapter 2. I still remember the day Alexander and I got our marriage certificate. The weather wasn't particularly great. We both wore white shirts and spent 50 yuan to take that marriage photo. Actually, I remember very clearly the moment we left the Civil Affairs Bureau that day. He stared at the red marriage certificate for quite a while, lost in thought. I asked him what was wrong, if he was regretting it, and he suddenly lifted me up. 2 adults, right in front of the Civil Affairs Bureau. I felt a bit embarrassed and told him to put me down. He then rested his chin on my shoulder and said, "Happy newlywed, my dear wife." Chapter 3. Newlyweds are always so sweet. My colleague rested her chin on her hand and teased me. Since Alexander had been coming to pick me up at the company often these days, everyone had gotten to know him. Blushing, I hurriedly stuffed my notebook into my bag and made a gesture of zipping my lips. Amidst the playful teasing of "Oh, still shy, huh?" from my coworkers, I ran towards Alexander. "Slow down." He patted my head, took my hand, and asked why I was staying late at a company that had a 6-hour workday. I secretly complained about how unreliable my boss was. We both burst into laughter over something funny. It seemed like being by Alexander's side always made me happy. He smiled warmly, tucking my messy hair behind my ear. Earlier, the game controller at home broke. So after dinner, I grabbed the new one and, with my hands on my hips, invited him to play a game with me. After 2 rounds, he didn't go easy on me at all, his character completely overpowering mine. I got mad and kicked him with my feet, and he immediately grabbed my ankle, pulling me toward him. He pinned me down on the couch. "Playing games is boring. How about we do something else?" Chapter 4. That day, he called me and said, "Hey babe, a new ice cream shop opened downstairs. I got you strawberry sea salt flavor. We can finally try that Cantonese restaurant we missed last time. And tonight we can watch that anime movie we've been wanting to see." I agreed, saying, "You're on your way home, right? I'll wait for you at home." But that day, I waited for him a long time. It was dark in the house by the time he got back. Of course, there was no fancy meal. No anime movie. The box in his hand did have the strawberry sea salt ice cream, only it had completely melted. He was dazed. I held on to him and immediately smelled the alcohol on him. "Why were you drinking?" He pushed me away and rushed to the bathroom. That was probably the first time he shut himself away in a space where I couldn't reach him. His phone, left on the shoe cabinet, kept ringing, over and over again. An unfamiliar number, calling again and again. I hesitated for a long time but eventually picked it up and pressed the answer button. From the other end of the line came broken sobs. "Alexander, Alexander, I regret it. Can you come back to me?" Panicking, I hung up the phone immediately. It was a woman I didn't know. Chapter 5. He locked himself in the bathroom for almost 2 hours. In the end, I stood by the bathroom door and knocked softly. I'm going to bed. Alexander, don't stay in there too long. Don't make me worry about you. He didn't respond. Honestly, I said I was going to sleep, but I couldn't fall asleep at all. I didn't even feel like playing on my phone. Just lying there with my mind completely filled with thoughts of him. In the end, I was the one who couldn't hold on anymore. At 4 in the morning, I opened the bedroom door. Thankfully, he hadn't stayed in the bathroom the whole time. He was on the living room sofa. No lights on, but the balcony window was open, letting in some light. He looked like a shadow on the couch. I walked up to him, and he slowly raised his head. He stared at me for a while, then barely forced a smile. Put on a jacket. Mary, don't catch a cold. His voice was so hoarse it barely sounded like him. I knelt in front of him, looking at him. He hadn't slept all night, his eyes bloodshot, staring at the carpet. My heart tightened painfully. As soon as my hand touched his, he pulled it away. I felt the brief chill of his touch, and I stood there frozen for quite some time. I'm going out for a walk. He suddenly stood up, walking so fast there wasn't a trace of hesitation. Alexander, it's so late. Where are you going? I called after him, but all I got in response was the sound of the door closing. I collapsed onto the couch and turned on the TV. I kept switching channels, over and over, until I finally threw the remote onto the carpet during a comedy show. It bounced high, and the battery cover flew off. Alexander had never treated me like this before. This was probably the first time he didn't explain anything to me. The first time he ignored me. The first time he didn't care about my feelings. He didn't want to stay in the same space as me. I knew that. Why? Was it because of that phone call that kept ringing? Was it because of the crying woman? That was when I realized just how much I liked Alexander. But I didn't even know who he used to love. Chapter 6. Later, I dozed off in a haze. My head was filled with thoughts of Alexander, who had left the house last night. In my dreams, I either saw him bringing another woman home or heard him telling me, "Mary, let's get a divorce." I was startled awake by the sound of the door opening. I had thought many times about what I would say when he came back. I imagined myself sarcastically saying, "Oh, you finally decided to come back." But in reality, I just glanced at him, stood up, and walked toward the bedroom. I felt tired. He followed me all the way, and when we reached the bedroom, he pinned me against the door. "Mary, I'm sorry. It's my fault." His naturally lazy voice always had a soothing tone, especially when he was trying to please me. I slowly pried his hands off my waist. "There's nothing wrong. Everyone needs a little space to themselves." "You're angry." His words weren't a question. They were a statement. "So what?" "So, I'll never leave without saying a word again. Please don't be mad, okay?" I kept my head down. The bedroom lights were off, and it seemed like dawn had just broken, but the sky was still dark. I took a deep breath. "I'm not mad because you left without saying anything. I'm just afraid that when you leave without a word, I'll never be able to find you again. I'm just afraid that at that moment, you'll leave and never come back." Maybe I'm just a sensitive person, so when I start talking about things like this, I end up crying, and by the end, I can't even speak clearly. My words came out broken, and he panicked a little, wiping my tears away with his sleeve. He pulled me into his arms. "Mary, please don't cry, okay? I'll do anything you want. Just don't cry. When you cry, it hurts me, you know." Chapter 7. When Alexander came back, he brought me breakfast. It was all my favorite food. He always remembered what I liked. I stirred the shredded tofu with my chopsticks, pursing my lips and glancing up at him several times. He reached out and tucked my hair behind my ear before it could fall into the soup. "What do you want to ask?" "Alexander, last night, someone kept calling your phone." I answered it. Even though we were partners, it didn't mean we had no personal privacy. We never went through each other's phones. So when I told him this, I felt a bit unsure. He didn't seem surprised. He just gave a casual "Who is she?" "Your ex-girlfriend, right?" I looked up at him. He lowered his gaze. I didn't understand why. At this moment, he wouldn't look at me. "Yeah. Did she come to see you yesterday?" "Yeah." Alexander and I had always had a deep connection. So, the way he was acting now, I could sense something. That woman was special to him, not just in an ordinary way. Suddenly, an evil thought popped into my head, a desire to poke at his wound. Since he was like this, I had to ask him, why did you two break up? He looked at me, a little helpless. Her health was poor. My parents didn't approve of her. So, you two were like star-crossed lovers. Huh? I laughed as I spoke, but for some reason, bitterness surged in my heart. Mary, don't laugh like that. There was a brief moment of confusion in his eyes. He reached out and gently rubbed my head twice. You are my wife. The first person I think of can only be you. I used to think that vows of eternal love were the most useless things in the world. But later, I realized that when you meet someone you love, all you want is a sense of hope, a fleeting, empty promise to calm your restless heart. Chapter 8. I had a feeling that the issue with Alexander's ex-girlfriend wouldn't be resolved so easily. Sure enough, during lunch, I received a friend request. The verification message said, "Hello, I'm Alexander's ex-girlfriend. Can we talk?" What's there to talk about? I immediately took a screenshot and sent it to Alexander. As always, he replied instantly, "Why aren't you taking a nap?" This man, always changing the subject. Your ex-girlfriend just sent me a friend request. Ignore her. I didn't send another message to Alexander, but I still accepted his ex-girlfriend's friend request. Not long after, she sent me a message. Can you divorce Alexander? In my entire life, I had never seen an ex directly asking the current partner to divorce. While I was taken aback, I still took a screenshot and sent it to Alexander. He replied with 3 dots. And, sweetheart, delete her and take a nap, okay? That was definitely not going to happen. Why do you think I would divorce Alexander just because you said so? I sent a message back to his ex-girlfriend. Because he loves me, not you. Her arrogant tone infuriated me. And the worst part was, Alexander's reaction last night made me feel like there was a possibility it was true. Toward the end of the workday, Alexander texted me, saying he had to work late and I should go home first. That set me off even more. Come pick me up, I said as I called him. A few departments had issues today, and I have to handle them. Can you go home first, honey? I promise I'll be home by 7:30. Through the receiver, I could hear the noise around him. He was probably taking the call in the middle of everything, and someone in the background was calling his name. But I still felt hurt and anxious. Are you meeting your ex-girlfriend instead? Bye. I angrily hung up the phone. Fine. If he didn't want to pick me up, so be it. I huffed in frustration. Since he wasn't coming, I didn't feel like going home either. It just so happened that my coworkers were planning a dinner gathering, so I went with them to a barbecue joint. It was rowdy and chaotic, and I found myself squeezed into a corner, feeling completely lifeless. I kept checking my phone from time to time, but there was nothing. In the past, if I had hung up on him like that, he would have called me back to make it up to me. But today, he didn't. Not once. I felt a figure standing in front of me, holding my dizzy head. I tried to figure out who it was, but I couldn't lift my head. Thankfully, he crouched down in front of me. I squinted, trying to focus on his dark eyes, until he pressed a finger to my forehead. How much did you drink? He then picked up an empty bottle from the table and took a look. Budweiser? Didn't you say you hated Budweiser the most? You drank so much. I guess you're planning to call in sick tomorrow. He pulled me up and held me in his arms. I grabbed his collar and sniffed. No scent of women's perfume. Why did you come here? To find you, he answered calmly, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I had so many questions for him, but I didn't know how to ask. Like, why didn't you call me to comfort me? Even though I knew it would sound petty, I still wanted to ask. I wriggled out of his arms, but he just switched to holding my hand. Our fingers interlocked. Did you drive here, Alexander? Yeah, I'm feeling a little carsick. Is that a new thing you've developed today? I always get dizzy after drinking. I felt lightheaded, and before I knew it, I realized he had actually picked me up. Alexander! The feeling of weightlessness made me wrap my arms around his neck. His hands rested on my waist. Carsick. Huh? Guess I'll carry you home instead. Hey, Alexander. Yeah? Say something. What do you want to hear? Tell me about you and your ex. He probably knew I was going to bring this up, so he wasn't surprised at all. There's nothing else to say, other than what I've already told you. If we both fell into the water, who would you save first? I'd save you. You'd save me first? I'd only save you. I wouldn't save her at all, okay? The night breeze was a bit chilly. I shivered slightly. I didn't like the smell of alcohol on me, but Alexander smelled so good. Give me your jacket. Are you cold? Yeah. He put me down, crouched in front of me, and zipped up his oversized jacket all the way to the top. I looked down at him. There were tiny beads of sweat on his forehead. Should I carry you on my back? He walked in front of me, ready to crouch down, but I grabbed his hand. No, I can walk by myself. Oh, are you feeling bad for your husband now? His teasing tone made me blush, and I quickly walked ahead. He caught up from behind, ruffling my hair playfully. Chapter 9. Recently, the rumors circulating in the building had reached my ears. It seemed like all the neighbors were saying that I was the mistress who had stolen someone else's man. There was no basis for the rumors, but I couldn't help but wonder if it had something to do with that ex-girlfriend. On Saturday, as I was returning home from grocery shopping, a kid bumped into me out of nowhere. My mom says you're a homewrecker who steals other people's husbands. The kid stuck out his tongue at me and then ran off. Feeling baffled and slightly annoyed, I headed upstairs, only to find a woman standing in front of my door. It was the first time I had really gotten a good look at Laura, Alexander's ex-girlfriend, even more beautiful than I had imagined. She had that kind of fragile, delicate beauty that made you feel like she might break at the slightest touch. She probably thought she had what it took to win Alexander back. Move. I glanced at her and raised my hand to unlock the door with my fingerprint. I don't want to argue with you. So, Miss Lee, can you give Alexander back to me? Her tone was just like it had been over the phone, soft yet arrogant. I sighed. I've already told you. That's impossible. I was his first love. He loved me like his life depended on it. What do you have? Do you think you can take him away from me? Her emotions flared up, and her eyes started to redden. Sorry to break it to you, but I've got a marriage certificate with him. I didn't mean to poke at her wound, but it was clear that my words hit her hard. She trembled a little. Then, she became hysterical. Why? I've already lost everything. Why do you have to take Alexander away from me? He's mine. He's mine. She kept muttering to herself. I was starting to get irritated. But just then, the door opened. I was about to tell her to stop crying in front of my house. But before I could say anything, she suddenly threw herself backward. Ah, you pushed me. Then she started sobbing pitifully. She fell pretty hard. I was about to help her up and ask if she needed me to book her an appointment with a neurologist when I caught sight of a white shirt. I hadn't noticed when Alexander had appeared behind us. But he was there, holding the groceries I'd been carrying. Seriously? It's the 21st century, and this woman was still playing this kind of trick. Chapter 10. She looked pitiful, with teary eyes, but her gaze was fixed on Alexander the whole time. Alexander just lowered his head, fiddling with the groceries in my hand. What are we having for dinner tonight? He completely ignored her. The woman stared at us in disbelief, while Alexander wrapped his arm around my waist and gently pushed me into the house. Wait! Alexander! She suddenly jumped up and grabbed his wrist. Are you really going to leave me? Her eyes were red, and her lips trembled uncontrollably. She wasn't even pretending anymore. She was desperate. Didn't you say you would never leave me? Alexander, you're the only one who can save me. That was the first time I ever saw Alexander show signs of frustration. The always smiling, sunny Alexander, who seemed unshakable, was visibly rattled by this woman. He forcefully shook her hand off. Laura, can't you just grow up? There are things you need to face on your own. I'm no longer the one who can save you, and stop bothering my wife. As the door closed, I saw her slowly slide to the ground. She looked devastated, but suddenly lifted her head to glare at me, her eyes burning with hatred. Chapter 11. Did that scare you? The door shut out everything, and for a long moment, I couldn't gather my thoughts. He pulled me into his arms, holding me close, gently stroking my hair. I'm sorry, Mary. I stared at the floor, feeling a sudden sting in my nose. Alexander, tell me, was marrying you really the right decision? He froze for a moment, then pulled me tighter into his embrace. I'm never letting you go. I knew Laura kept harassing Alexander. Frequently. It seemed like the whole ordeal finally ended after we had to call the police. After that, Laura stopped appearing in our lives for a long time. I also learned more about what happened between Alexander and Laura from his old friends. Alexander's parents never approved of Laura, but Alexander never wanted to break up with her. It was Laura who ended up in bed with a rich guy first. That's when Alexander lost hope and agreed to the blind date his family set up with me. So you see, no wonder Laura thought she could win. Even the fact that Alexander and I met was because of her. Chapter 12. Alexander. My company is organizing a hiking trip to County C. We can bring family members. Do you want to come? I held a spatula as I walked into the living room. Alexander was sitting on the couch working. Of course. Honey. He grinned and playfully pinched my cheek. It had been several days since everything settled down, and I knew Alexander was trying hard to make me forget all the unpleasantness. And I was slowly starting to believe that life was getting better, partly because there was no longer a third party intruding between us, and partly because of myself. I had some good news to share with Alexander. In the evening, while Alexander was packing our bags, I hesitated at the bedroom door. Alexander! I waved at him, and he raised his eyebrows, walking over to me. Yeah. He stood tall, playfully trapping me against the doorframe. I was going to tell you something. I cleared my throat. But now, it depends on how you behave. All right. I'll behave. He patted my head, asking if there was anything else I needed to pack. One of the reasons I wanted to take Alexander along was that he always helped me pack. I have to admit that. His organized packing always looked way better than my chaotic stuffing. Chapter 13. Since it was a company-organized event, quite a few families attended. Some even brought their children. Mrs. Wong, who worked at the desk next to mine, brought her child, who had just started kindergarten, wearing a cute little fisherman's hat. Did you always like kids this much? I was playing with the little boy using some snacks when Alexander came up behind me, gathering my long hair into place. I've always liked kids. What about you? Do you like them? I turned around and looked at him. I do, especially if... He leaned closer, his breath tickling my ear. If we had a child. The trip to County C wasn't long, but we had to wait for the bus. Even though I had applied sunscreen, I still felt the sun was harsh. Just as I raised my hand to block the sun, Alexander opened an umbrella and held it over my head. His eyes sparkled as he looked at me, wearing an expression that said, I know my wife better than anyone. I was just about to compliment him when a taxi screeched to a stop right in front of us. It wasn't just a stop, it was almost a drift. A woman stumbled out of the taxi, rushing over to grab Alexander's arm. Hey, what are you doing? Who are you? We had a lot of people around us, and everyone started gathering to see what was happening. Alexander, come with me. I didn't recognize the woman grabbing his arm, but I could tell from Alexander's expression that he knew her. The woman's face was full of urgency, but Alexander stood still. Laura jumped off a building. My temples started to throb. That name was always a harbinger of trouble. They managed to save her, but she urgently needs a blood transfusion. Alexander, you know she's Rh negative, and the blood bank doesn't have enough in stock. Only you can save her now. Alexander! I knew Alexander's blood type. He also had the rare Rh negative blood, commonly known as panda blood. Laura had jumped from a building. Was it because of Alexander? My mind was racing. Alexander stood there in silence, unmoved despite the woman's desperate pulling. The woman turned to me and suddenly knelt at my feet. You're Alexander's wife, right? Hello. I'm Laura's sister. I know Laura has done many wrong things, but only Alexander can save her now. I beg you, please. Forgive her past mistakes. Let Alexander donate his blood to save Laura. It's a matter of life and death. The woman kept pleading on the ground, and more people gathered to watch. I felt like my mind was in a fog. Her crying was getting under my skin, making me feel overwhelmed. After what felt like a long time, I heard Alexander's voice. I'll go with you. His words were low, soft, but they left no room for argument. The woman immediately jumped to her feet, her tears not even fully dry, a smile spreading across her face. Alexander got into the taxi without even glancing at me, closing the door behind him. I stood there, frozen, watching the taxi drive away, and suddenly, I remembered the good news I had been hiding from Alexander. I was pregnant, and he didn't know, and afterward, he would never have the chance to know. Chapter 14. The bus continued its journey into the mountains, and I stared blankly out the window. Mary, would you like a cheese stick? Mrs. Wang nudged my shoulder. Alexander had gone off with the taxi, leaving me alone for the rest of the trip. Seeing how down I looked, Mrs. Wang switched seats with her husband and sat next to me. My kid loves these. Want to try? She handed me a brightly lit cheese stick, gleaming in the sunlight. Thanks, Mrs. Wang. I gave her a small smile as I accepted it. A lot of people had seen Alexander leave, and I knew Mrs. Wang was trying to be considerate of me. How old is your child? 6. Starting primary school next year. As she spoke about her child, Mrs. Wang's whole face lit up, and she eagerly shared stories about her child's antics. Without thinking, I rested my hand on my stomach. Alexander and I, our child. Such a strange existence. A seed growing inside me. The mountains of County C were beautiful, untouched by overdevelopment, and still full of local charm. We were staying overnight at a guest house nestled in the hills. The host had prepared a few free-range chickens for dinner, and the kids were noisily playing while we waited for the meal. The little boy I'd been playing with earlier suddenly ran up to me. Sis, where's the big brother? It took me a moment to realize he was talking about Alexander. He was just a child, completely innocent. But even so, I felt a sudden emptiness in my heart. The big brother doesn't want to be with the sister anymore. Why doesn't the big brother want the sister? He tilted his head and looked at me. Because the big brother has to save someone who's very important to him. Isn't the sister the most important person to the big brother? I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Sis, here's some candy. But the little boy quickly forgot about the conversation and tried to share his candy with me. You shouldn't eat candy before dinner. His mom scooped him up from behind, laughing and apologizing to me. I shook my head and told her it was fine. There were quite a few families on this trip, and I guess because I was alone, everyone seemed extra sensitive around me. My phone vibrated. It was a text from Alexander. I figured by now he had finished donating his blood. I didn't know if he had saved his first love. He called me, but I hung up. The text was simple, telling me where he had packed my toiletries in the suitcase. The mountain was bathed in moonlight, with the shadows of trees swaying on the ground. A dog barked twice, and suddenly the evening wind rose, seemingly out of nowhere. Chapter 15. In the afternoon, we went rafting, and everyone was pretty tired afterward. After dinner, we all returned to our rooms. I stared at the empty room. I closed the door and collapsed onto the bed. My hand found its way to my belly again. It's truly amazing. There's a life inside me now. Am I still one person? Or am I now two? I started thinking about names for this little one. With the last name Song, what would be a good name? Stella Song, maybe? There were lots of stars out tonight, but that seemed too random. I'll have to check the dictionary properly when I get back. As I was thinking of names, I drifted off to sleep. The next thing I heard was frantic banging on the door. Mary, are you there? Mary, get up. There's an earthquake. Mrs. Wang's voice was yelling outside, but my mind hadn't fully processed what was happening. The bed was shaking. It kept shaking. The roof looked like it was about to collapse at any moment, and dust was falling onto my face. Suddenly, I snapped awake, jumped out of bed, and ran for the door. People were shouting everywhere, and outside the window. It was like an apocalyptic scene. Huge chunks of the mountain were sliding down, sending waves of mud splashing everywhere. Mrs. Wang and her family were outside, and many others were running out too. Children's screams mixed with the overwhelming noise. I managed to stand, barely, but then the ground cracked open right in front of me. Mary, over here! Mrs. Wang was still trying to reach out for me when a large boulder crashed down right in front of us. Watch out! Her husband shielded her tightly. That was the last thing I saw. She was protected. How lucky she was. Suddenly, the ground gave way beneath my feet, and I plummeted down with the building. A sharp pain shot through my foot. I must have stepped on a nail while running. The sensation of falling, my skin scraping against rough debris, and the intense pain in my bones as I hit the ground made it hard to breathe. I realized there was no one around me. I was at the bottom, with things still falling all around. A huge boulder had pinned my leg, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't pull it free. The noise was so overwhelming. My cries felt small and insignificant. I finally broke down. Is anyone there? Is anyone there? Please, someone help me, someone save me. Everything was pitch black. I couldn't see anything, not even the moonlight. I didn't know if it was too dark or if I had already lost my vision. I tried to pull my leg out, but it wouldn't budge. It hurts. It hurts so much. Someone save me. Dad, Mom, Alexander. It really hurt. At first, the pain in my abdomen wasn't too noticeable, but then I felt something slowly leaking out, and my mind gradually began to understand what was happening. It was strange at that moment. I thought, I won't have to worry about how to tell Alexander about the baby anymore. Alexander, among the crashing of rocks, I murmured his name. Are you happy now that you've saved your first love? But it seems like our baby is gone. Chapter 16. I had a dream. It was raining heavily, and Alexander ran toward me like a madman, falling to his knees beside me, calling my name over and over. But I was so tired, I didn't want to respond anymore. Then I heard the doctor tell him, "Didn't you know? Your wife was pregnant. But now the baby is gone." There was nothing we could do. Saving her was already a miracle. My parents, friends, and colleagues all surrounded me, begging me to wake up. But I was just too tired, too exhausted, hungry, in pain, like flashes of my life playing before my eyes. I remembered the day I first met Alexander. He really was the kind of person you could easily fall for. But, Alexander, was I being too selfish? Seeing Mrs. Wang's husband protect her, I couldn't stop myself from wondering, if you were here, would you protect me like that? Didn't you promise me that you would save me first? You liar. The sound of the heart monitor beeped rhythmically. Every part of my body felt like it was in excruciating pain. I blinked, staring at the always bleak hospital ceiling. Mary, you're awake. Hold on, I'll get the doctor. The screech of a chair being pushed back violently echoed in the room as someone stood up. I realized the room was empty now. Mom, still as impatient as ever. A doctor in a white coat rushed in, asking me all sorts of questions about how I felt. I turned my head slightly and saw my mom in the corner, quietly wiping away tears. It made me want to cry too. It's okay. It's a good thing. Really, after all this time, you're finally out of danger. You and your daughter are both miracles. Dad tried to lighten the mood, though he wasn't too skilled at it. Mary, you really made it through. Oh, I can finally breathe. Do you know? I've been praying to the goddess Guanyin every day, and she truly watched over you. Thank goodness you're okay. Don't worry. Honey, you can always try for another baby. What matters is that you're safe now. Mom made you some porridge. The doctor said you should stick to soft foods for now. Here, let me cool it down for you. Later, many people came to see me. Most of them were friends and relatives. My best friend, who I'd known since childhood, hugged me the moment she saw me and nearly crushed my healing ribs. Mary, I've missed you so much. Wah. I reached up and wiped the tears from her cheeks. We all know about the horrible thing Alexander did. Your mom confronted him, asking why he didn't go with you to County C, and we found out he went to donate blood to his ex-girlfriend. Honestly, I think it'd be better if that ex just disappeared. We kicked Alexander out. Without your permission, we won't let him see you. Mary, you just focus on getting better, and don't let that jerk stress you out. Honestly, that was for the best. I didn't really want to see him either. At least not right now. I'm afraid that if I do, I'll feel a crushing sense of injustice. I'd been sleeping a lot, but as night fell, I couldn't sleep at all. Lying in bed, my hand unconsciously moved to my belly again. There was a big scar there. My mom made it sound simple, but I knew the truth. With a wound like this, the chances of having another child were slim. I counted carefully today. Even if I fully recover, I'll be left with dozens of scars. What a mess. I should have never gone to County C. I didn't even enjoy the trip, and now I'm stuck with this disaster. As I lay there lost in thought, the door to the hospital room creaked open. It was late. I didn't expect anyone to come, but I recognized his footsteps immediately. He walked over to my bedside, expertly tucking the blanket around me where I had kicked it off. The air conditioner made a soft noise. I guessed he had turned up the temperature. As he pulled the blanket over me again, I couldn't hold it in anymore and yanked it back down. Alexander stood by my bedside. He seemed startled. You're not asleep? His voice was hoarse, more than I'd ever heard before. We locked eyes in the darkness. After a moment, he was the one who looked away first and softly called my name. Mary. In the stillness, his words hung in the air, enveloped by the quiet night. Alexander, it's not your fault. I never thought my voice could sound so calm. I'd thought about this a lot. I was angry. I was selfish. But in the end, these were just the facts. What fault could you have? You were just trying to save someone. It wouldn't have mattered who it was, you would have saved them, right? You couldn't have known how things would turn out like this. I understand. Alexander, I have no right to blame you. I knew my soul had split in two, one side full of resentment, the other compassionate and forgiving, one half pushing me, the other suppressing me. I tried so hard to pretend I'd let go. But when he hugged me, he smelled faintly of tobacco. I didn't know he smoked. Mary, it turns out people really can hate themselves. I dream about going back and punching my past self. Do you know that? I dream about it every night. I should have realized you were pregnant. You gave me so many hints. It was me. It was my fault. If I had just asked sooner, if I had known, I would never have let you go there alone. It's all my fault. I realized he was shaking. I felt something wet seeping into my hospital gown. Was this man actually crying? His breathing was heavy, like he wanted to hold me tighter but was afraid of hurting me. I stared blankly at a patch of light on the floor, slowly feeling a sadness spread through me that I couldn't control. Let's get a divorce. Alexander. I felt his breathing stop for a moment. Alexander. Actually, Laura came to see me today. Funny, isn't it? We're both in the same hospital. She broke her leg, but she still insisted on coming to see me. Do you know what she told me? She thanked me. She thanked me for trading our baby's life for hers. She said she felt like her life was borrowed from our baby. I clenched the bedsheet in anger. Don't listen to her nonsense. She's lost her mind. Yes, she's crazy. I suddenly grabbed his collar. He didn't resist. I saw my own reflection in his eyes. Desperate and broken. But I'm crazy too. You're not at fault. No one is. It was the earthquake that took our child. But what about me? What about my baby? Who's going to save me? Who's going to pity me? In the darkness, I saw something in his eyes, gentleness, guilt, loneliness. But I didn't want him to look at me like that. Every time I think about the intimate things you did with her, I feel sick. Disgust is instinctive. I don't blame you, but I still hate you. Listen carefully. Alexander, I hate you. My head sank onto his chest, my voice growing softer and softer. That's enough. There's no need to say more. Chapter 17. Alexander agreed to the divorce. I knew he would. He always indulged me, no matter what I asked for. In the end, he couldn't refuse me. The day we registered our marriage, the weather wasn't good. Today was the same, cloudy skies. After it was all done, he asked me how I was getting home. I said I'd take a taxi. Let me give you a ride. No need. It's out of your way. Mr. Song. Mr. Song. He chuckled softly and repeated my words under his breath. Mary, you've never called me Mr. Song before. The day we parted. What did you say to her? I'm not sure if I can't remember or if I've deliberately forgotten. In Chinese, goodbye means see you again. So that day, I didn't say it. I said, bye-bye. Chapter 18. During the New Year holiday, I took a trip to Yunnan. It was beautiful there, an esports hotel for 300 yuan for 3 nights, with a view of the snow-capped mountains from the window. In the evening, I went to a music bar. A little girl selling flowers approached me with a huge bouquet of roses, their colors refracting in the light, and smiled. I bought a bouquet, planning to take it back to the hotel to snap a picture for social media. Oh, right. Sis, this is for you. The little girl rummaged through her bag. Turns out she had many jobs. This letter has been forwarded through so many places. And finally, it's caught up with your travels. This is fate. I wish you good luck today. Back at the hotel, I slowly unfolded the letter. Alexander's handwriting. It was awful. So bad that I could recognize it immediately. I knew he majored in science and never cared much about handwriting. But at least he wrote slowly, so I could manage to read most of it. Mary, this is the 31st letter I've written to you. I tore up the previous ones, they were too ugly, and I was never satisfied with what I wrote. Don't be annoyed. This is the best I can do after practicing with a calligraphy book. I've recently picked up the bad habit of smoking. I guess it's because no one's around to keep me in check anymore, and everyone around me smokes. So I've been smoking a lot too. But don't worry, I didn't smoke before writing this letter. I won't let the paper smell of smoke. I used to think there wouldn't be anything in life I'd truly regret. Until I met you. Every night, I dream about how things would have been if I had gone to the mountains with you that day. I could have protected you, protected our child. I'm sorry. You probably hate it when I talk about what ifs. You don't like men who beg. I know that. You don't like being entangled in things. I know that too. I have nothing left to give you. You said you hate me. And what can I do? I can only accept it. Even if it's hate, it still means I get to stay in your heart for a little while. I couldn't understand for the longest time how things turned out like this. But eventually, I came to terms with it. Life is full of regrets, full of mistakes, full of coincidences that go wrong. The other day, I went drinking with some friends, and I hit my head on a glass. My friends said I was shouting your name, asking you why. So, I guess I still haven't let it go. I miss you. I guess it's because I miss the toothbrush cup you always kept next to mine. I even bought another one to put there. When you moved out, you forgot to take the plants you were growing. I've tried to take care of them, but they're barely surviving. I know it's ridiculous to say that I can't let go of you at this point. But here I am, writing this letter. People are complicated, contradictory creatures. So, forgive me a little. I miss you so much it's driving me crazy. I heard from friends that you've taken a job that moves you around a lot. Like you're trying to avoid me. That's fine, as long as you're happy. I haven't changed jobs. Though I recently got promoted. The puff pastry shop near our place closed down. So I can't pretend anymore that I'm waiting for you to come back so I can buy you some. I've written a lot. You're probably tired of reading it. You never liked reading long paragraphs from me. Mary, I still want to tell you that I love you. There's one thing I know for sure, no matter when you appeared in my life. I would have fallen in love with you. You hate me out of instinct, but I love you all the same.